Before I launch into what will almost certainly be an unholy tirade, I want to answer the obvious question. Where did my bed go? Although it's none of your business, I will indulge you. I had to get rid of the bed because I had to make room for the Legion of Friends and the other Legion of Friends. I have so many friends. I sleep on the floor. But the last thing you want when you meet a girl is for her to go on about her friends for an hour, so I guess we're gonna have to focus on something else. And believe me, I would much rather talk about these guys than what we're about to talk about. Today, we are going to waste our precious energy and time on a funny little concept called brain scans for trans kids. I'm glad to see we're taking small steps to returning to the good old days when we used to just like lobotomize trans people. I want to clarify that I'm mostly going to be talking about the use of brain scans as a criteria for diagnosis, particularly in children. Obviously, I have no understanding of like medical literature or anything like that, but whether this is reliable or even real is unrelated to the fact that people still fucking talk about it and use it as if it is. So we're going to discuss it in that context. That being said, the study in question is one that I saw in Science Daily, and this might even be like an abbreviated version of a study because there's no mention of like sample size or any specifics or data beyond, oh, we made some observations on an unnamed number of children, which I really hope that's not the whole study because Jesus Christ. Either way, here's the summary as it is listed on the page. Brain activity and structure in transgender adolescents more closely resembles the typical activation patterns of their desired gender, according to new research. New as of 2018. The findings suggest that differences in brain function may occur early in development and that brain imaging may be a useful tool for earlier identification of transgenderism in young people. Now, the use of the word transgenderism, once you see that, it's like just time to stop reading whatever you're reading. That's like the most transphobic dog whistle of a word in the fucking known universe. And doctors, when they're talking about trans people, they like to be like, oh, well, facts don't care about your feelings. We're trying to help you. This research is meant to shed some light on your situation. You should actually thank us. And that's used as an excuse to be not necessarily callous, but I would say inaccurate in medical documentation, because the word transgenderism just needs to be fucking removed from the medical vernacular. It's useless. It's completely useless. I want to clarify here that I'm not accusing this article of being transphobic. I'm mostly just calling it reckless. So I don't think the intent here is bad, but the execution is terrible and the implications are worse. The structure of this study was pretty much just taking an unspecified number of adolescent trans people and fucking doing lab rat experiments on them or something. Like, they made them do like memory and spatial reasoning stuff, and they scanned their brains in an MRI, and supposedly the brain activation looked male or female depending on the... I'm not a scientist. But the crazy thing, and this is, again, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I don't know shit about this. To my knowledge, there is not a known identified human pheromone. Humans don't have pheromones as far as science understands right now, but the study says that they exposed these children to pheromones that are supposed to trigger certain responses in male and female brains respectively, and they responded how they thought they would based on the gender identity of the child. Which again is weird because I don't think there's a human pheromone that we know about. Like, the real groundbreaking discovery here is the discovery of a human pheromone. Like, holy shit. Of course, that could just be a poor translation. These are Europeans we're talking about. They're too stupid to build an intersection, let alone talk about fucking science. Here's a line I want to point out, by the way, that pisses me the fuck off. In addition, gender dysphoric adolescent girls showed a male-typical brain activation pattern during a visual spatial memory exercise. So you are clinically describing these children by their fucking birth genders. You're claiming that your research is in the interest of transgender people, and in the fucking research, you are misgendering the subjects of the research. I don't fucking know. I don't know. From a philosophical perspective, which is the only perspective that matters, diagnosing transgenderism in children using a brain scan is a terrible fucking idea. And I think to perfectly illustrate why, when I told a friend that I was gonna make this video, the first thing she said when I explained the concept was, isn't that the same argument white people said for slavery, but with skulls? You know what? It kind of is. If you don't know, phrenology was a thing that they used to do on people, where they would measure your skull and they could tell you how smart you were based on your skull. Real high level shit. And phrenology, in spite of being really fucking stupid, was adopted as an actual science that was used in actual fucking science shit to explain that black people are inferior. Like, what? Oh my god. So, if you see similarities between phrenology and doing brain scans on trans people to tell just how trans they are, yeah, the similarities are there. But like I said, if we're gonna go back to the olden ways, we may as well just bring back lobotomies. I think one of the biggest problems with this, outside of like the social implications, is that an indicator for diagnosis can just as easily become a criteria for diagnosis. And if you weren't aware, our criteria for diagnosing trans kids is already so fucked. I mean, it is beyond fucked. Hold up, let me pull this up. Let me pull up the good old, let me whip out the DSM-5. The DSM-5 defines gender dysphoria in children as a marked incongruence between one's experienced or expressed gender and assigned gender, lasting at least 6 months as manifested by at least 6 of the following. And here's the fucked up part. At least one of which must be the first criteria. That first criteria being a strong desire to be of the other gender, or an insistence that one is of the other gender, or some alternative gender different from one's assigned gender. The problem with diagnosing transgender children, and the reason some of us transition so late in life, is because we don't know we want to be a different gender. We don't know that. We don't know why the fuck we're suffering. There are symptoms of gender dysphoria that are there that we don't know how to describe. For my entire life, I always thought it would just be better to be a girl. I thought everyone believed that. So in a clinical setting, if my parents had actually bothered to get me checked out for the depression I definitely had, I wouldn't have known to explain my feelings as ones related to gender. But I'm being picky. On to the next criteria. Remember, a child needs at least 6 of these to get a diagnosis. A strong preference for cross-dressing. A strong preference for cross-gender roles in make-believe or fantasy play. A strong preference for the toys, games, or activities stereotypically used or engaged in by the other gender. A strong preference for playmates of the other gender. A strong rejection of typically masculine or feminine activities depending on the birth gender of the child. A strong dislike of one's sexual anatomy. And a strong desire for the physical sex characteristics that match one's experienced gender. Based on these criteria, as a child, I would not have been diagnosed with gender dysphoria, in spite of the fact that I definitely had it, and it was definitely ruining my life. I loved to roll around in the dirt and play with monster trucks and fucking climb trees and shit. But when I was in middle school, I looked in the mirror one day and it looked like my face was fucking melting, and I was like, huh, that's fucked up. I kind of want to kill myself. And it never went away. Now imagine that you add a brain scan to this list. Do you think that if brain scans are added to this list, they're going to become just one of the criteria and you still only need 6? So if you fail your brain scan, well, you can still get diagnosed because you still have 6 of the other ones. Or do you think it's going to be like number 1, where you need it to get the diagnosis? Just some food for thought, but I have a weird feeling whoever makes that decision is not going to be someone like me or someone like you who actually has thought about it. It's probably going to be a 45-year-old man in a lab coat who's pissed off that his Mensa application got rejected. That's who's probably going to make that decision. And then it's going to go before a panel of people who honestly do not fucking give a shit. And then it's going to be printed into the book, the almighty oracle, the DSM-6, and that's going to become standard, and that's going to determine the care that everyone fucking gets. Especially, in this case, children. A lot of us had to fucking lie to get our diagnosis because we don't meet the fucking criteria. We know what we need, but the DSM-5 is so fucked up that we just have to fucking skirt around it to be taken seriously by doctors. Children suck at lying, and even then, if they're like I was, they don't know what they need. Adding another hurdle for a child to jump to get the treatment that they need is not the solution. No cis person, be they a doctor or parents or a school counselor, is going to think to ask the questions that need to be asked to figure out if a child is transgender. And if I had gone to a doctor when I was a kid, they probably would have just put me on Adderall and sent me back off to school. Hello, it's me from the future. So I'm trying to edit this thing, and I realized that this part of the video gets like a lot darker and more impassioned than I had wanted it to, but the gist is that we already have people who are barely competent making these decisions. If we put brain scans in the hands of these people, it will be complete fucking chaos. Not a good idea. Because like, think about it, if you're a trans kid and you get a brain scan that says you're either like only a little bit trans or like not trans or not trans enough, that's gonna totally fucks with you. Like, even when you're an adult, you're gonna have a hard time exploring things because it's gonna be like, oh, well, I already got my brain scan. I'm certainly not trans. Anyway, back to the fucking disaster area. Bye, have fun. I'm leaving now. I'm going. Bye. All that matters is that we take down barriers instead of building them up. Because when you start fucking with brain scans, you get shit like what's going on in the UK, where 16-year-olds can't get blockers. But blockers are so fucking great. They are so safe and effective. It's like such a no fucking brainer. So easy to just put somebody on blockers and figure it out from there. But because transgender medicine seems obsessed with erecting barriers to treatment, we're venturing further away from putting people on blockers and closer to just sending them off to the camps to be converted with fucking, I don't know, electrotherapy? What are they doing over in Indiana? I also want to say that you usually need a certain amount of evidence that something might be happening to someone to stick them in an MRI. If you have enough reason to suspect that a child is transgender to where you're going to stick them in an MRI to find out, you probably already know. I think the saddest thing is the number of trans people who cling to studies like this because they find it validating for some reason. Like, bootlicking the cisgender legislators and doctors that are standing between children and treatment is not how you improve society for yourself as a trans person. When you say that a brain scan of your own brain would help you feel more secure in your gender, for one, you are an insecure bitch. And for two, that just tells me everything I need to know about you. Like, that tells me how you feel about non-binary people. It tells me how you feel about me probably for not passing. It's like, if you care about what someone's brain looks like, you are such a superficial bitch. Anyway, speaking of brains, mine is completely fucking exhausted. I have exerted many calories on this video. Honestly, most of those calories were spent trying to stack these guys up in a way that they wouldn't fall over. And these guys were easier though because they're a little more chunky. There was one that didn't fit. He's a Moki. I don't really have any fun life updates for the end of this one, so I guess I'll just roll the footage of Bean. Bye.